Hey everybody, welcome back to Football Talk with Vinny. And as you can tell by today's video, we're going to be going over the Dallas Cowboys actually re-signing Dak Prescott. So the numbers came in at 4 years for $160 million. Huge news right here, especially as a Cowboys fan. I actually love the signing. We're going to get into it later in this video. But first, I'm just going to give you my instant reaction. Obviously, as a Cowboys fan, I'm super excited for it. A couple years ago, Dak was not great, and the fact that he wanted a bunch of money, I was kind of hesitant as a team to want to give him that kind of money, because again, when you pay a quarterback that kind of money, you kind of have to cut corners on the rest of your roster. But the way Dak has been playing, and I'll go over those statistics in a minute, over the last year and a half, he clearly deserves this money. Okay, so first we'll get into it with his contract. Again, the numbers were 4 years and $160 million. Now, the reported guarantees were $126 million. Obviously, that's broken down into a couple of different aspects of guaranteed money. The actual signing bonus was $66 million. And he has, it looks like, a roster bonus in 2024 of $5 million. The rest of the guarantees were actually due to his base salary being guaranteed. And what Dallas did was they did guarantee, I believe, his base salary for the first and second year of the deal. And then on March 22nd of 2022, his base salary for 2023 becomes guaranteed. I'm just reading this right off of overthecap.com. So essentially, he has his first 3 years of his base salary are guaranteed, and then he has the $66 million in his signing bonus guaranteed. So again, if you're not really familiar with how signing bonuses and just contracts work in general, I did make a video on it, kind of explaining it. You should definitely check that out, and then maybe come back here so you can kind of understand what I was talking about in his contract specifically. Now, obviously, though, you don't really have to get into the contract too much, because you're clearly never going to cut Dak, right? He's like 28 years old. He's going to play out these 4 years of the extension that we just gave him, and then get hopefully another extension. So I don't think it's going to be a situation where we're going to look to move off of him. But just so you have the numbers, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you really would not be able to move off of him until really going into his last year, where his salary cap for 2024 is $47 million. If you were to cut him, you'd pay him $26, so you would save $20. So just in case it becomes like a Carson Wentz situation or a Jared Goff situation, you're kind of, I guess, stuck with him for 3 years. So hopefully that doesn't happen, right? In the way he's been playing, you would not hope that the regression would happen so much to the fact that you would even look at that as a possibility. Now, with that out of the way, I'm just going to go into just my thoughts in general of why I think he actually deserves the money. So if you, as a Cowboys fan out there watching, right, if you watched Dak Prescott play since he's entered the league, there was a slow progression that took place, right? His rookie year, sure, we were 13-3, but I think every Cowboys fan that looks at themselves honestly knows that Dak Prescott was not the reason why we were winning ball games, right? We won games because our offensive line was, at that year, the best in the league. We had 3 All-Pros, right? Obviously, Zeke was, a 21, 22-year-old back, so he was in the prime of his career, especially as a running back, right? So he was dominant, and the defense wasn't too bad, and the fact that our offense had so much time of possession to give the defense some rest, right? But Dak just made the plays when they were there to be made, right? But if you go back and look at that season, I want to say of the 16 games, I want to say in 8 or 9 of them, he didn't throw for 200 yards. Now, this is not 1970s. This is 2010, 2016, right? If you're not throwing for 200 yards in a game, you're actually a below average and probably worse than that quarterback, right? If you were to just take 200 yards on average, multiply that by a 16-game season, you're throwing for 3,200 yards. If you went last year and looked at the quarterbacks that threw for 3,200 yards, I bet you you'd come up with 15, 16, 17 guys. So I actually just looked it up. There was 18 guys that actually threw for over 3,200 yards, and the guys below that either missed some time, like Daniel Jones, he was the next guy on that list. He either missed some time, or the only other real quarterback that I don't believe missed any time was Lamar Jackson. He was the only guy to not throw for 3,200 yards that didn't miss games. When you look at the rest of the list, the guys that just barely missed out, Drew Brees, he missed 5 or 6 games. Drew Lock had 2,900 yards. He missed 2 or 3 games, I want to say. Right, Joe Burrow threw for 2,600 yards. I believe he missed the last 6 games of the season. Right, Cam Newton missed some time, 2,600 yards. Carson Wentz was benched for a couple games. right? All of these quarterbacks would have went over 3,200 yards had they played a full season. And again, that's still, you're getting to the bottom end of quarterback play. So in today's day and age, if you can't throw for 200 yards in a game, it's pretty bad, actually. Now, very quickly, if you look at the actual stats from Dak Prescott in 2016, he had a 68% completion percentage. He threw for 3,600 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 4 picks, right? So the 3,600 yards is right on par kind of with the below average quarterbacks, right? Again, if you're not in the 4,000 range, I think 10 or 12 quarterbacks do for over 4,000. But again, if you just watch the games, he was clearly a game manager, right? He clearly was not the reason why we were winning games. And then that second season, right, when Zeke got the suspension, you saw when Zeke was out of the game for those 6 games, right, the offense really struggled because you were no longer able to run the ball. That means teams were not really scared of the play action, which means Dak had to just actually stand back in the pocket and just throw when the defense knew they were going to throw. And that's much more difficult than when you are a running offense and you're doing stuff off of play action. But as a Cowboys fan, again, I was very skeptical of giving him the contract. But in 2019, I did see him start to take that leap of like, hey, he's actually the reason we're winning ball games now. It's not what it was in his first 2 years of his career. And I think the kind of numbers back me up. If you look at it, he threw for 4,900 yards, 30 touchdowns to 11 picks. Right, and when you're at 4,900 yards, you're averaging exactly over 300 yards a game, because I believe it's 4,800 if you're averaging 300 yards a game. So again, with that being said, right, I think the way that Dak played in 2019 and the start he got off to in the 2020 season, where his numbers are ridiculous, so I'm just going to do it for you real quick. If he had played 16 games with the averages that he had, and if you count the game he got hurt as a full game, he was on pace for 5,900 yards, 28.8 touchdowns, and 12.8 picks. So again, he was on pace to really shatter the passing record, right? So even if he had a couple bad games, he was still probably going to get over 5,000 passing yards this season. So again, when you start being the reason why your team is winning a ball game, I think it's a much different conversation. And I think this is what's really lost in the casual fan, is they just look at statistics and not why or how you put up those statistics. You know, great example are when you look at quarterbacks that have a dominant running game, their stats are usually pretty good, right? There's a bunch of quarterbacks, guys like Ryan Tannehill. You know, you look at a guy like Ryan Tannehill, he kind of struggled in his early part of his career, but now that he's found a place in Tennessee, his stats are pretty good. Well, stats are good because, again, he's a good quarterback, right? But he's significantly helped out by the fact that you got Derrick Henry in the backfield. So when you're giving him that ball 20, 30 times a game, it makes defenses have to play the run. So now when you run your play actions, guys are more wide open. So it's just easier throws for the quarterback to make. You know, and that's the unfortunate part because we see it all the time. What ends up happening is we start to overvalue those quarterbacks, and then when they get big money and then you have to lose some talent around you, those quarterbacks start to play much worse. And I think another big factor for Cowboys fans you can really consider why he actually deserves his money is look at the way the Dallas Cowboys offense played when he got hurt, right? I think going into the season, everyone knew that Dallas had the best backup quarterback in the league, right? You had Andy Dalton, who was a starter for a decade in Cincinnati. So you clearly have the best backup quarterback. When Dak went down, our offense at that point, I think we were first in total yards, and we were like in the top 10 in points. And when Dak got hurt, our offense plummeted drastically. So again, I think that goes to show you that Dak is no longer just managing the games, because when Dak goes out, you can't just replace his production easily. You know, and to me, when you really start thinking about where Dak ranks in the quarterback list, I don't think he's in the top 5, right? I think there's easily 5 quarterbacks, you know, probably 6 that you can name that are, I think everyone would clearly say, okay, they're better than Dak Prescott, right? Guys like Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, you know I'm forgetting some guys. Let's just throw Josh Allen in there. And then, you know, I just out of respect, we'll say Tom Brady. I mean, he's getting older. He has some bad games too, but he's coming off for a Super Bowl. So we'll say Tom Brady. So I think those 6, it's kind of tough to argue. But then I think that next category, there's probably like 6 or 7 guys. I think you can make a case for any one of them being the number 7 quarterback. But again, all those quarterbacks, I believe, should be kind of ranked in that same category. Guys like Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford, all those quarterbacks that are, either A, they're on the downside of their career, but they were good for a long time, or the younger quarterbacks that are just coming up that they're clearly Pro Bowl caliber quarterbacks now. And now I do think Dak Prescott is definitely in that category. Whether you rank him towards the top of that category, towards the bottom, will really determine whether you have him as a top 10 guy or not. But either way, if you don't have him in his top 10, he's probably 11 or 12 or 13 even in your list. And then at the end of the day, if you have him as a top 10 quarterback, you have to give him that kind of money. That's just the way it works, right? Josh Allen in a couple years, if not maybe this offseason, he's going to get more than Dak Prescott. When Lamar Jackson's contract's up, he's probably going to get more than either Dak Prescott or Josh Allen if he gets his deal first. And that's just the way it works, right? In a couple years, Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow, if they play the way they've been playing, they're going to get more than the next guy. And that's just kind of how it works. That's a quarterback position. Now, don't get me wrong. In the first couple years of Dak's career, I was hesitant in wanting to give him the money. But again, when you see the things that have transpired over the last 2 years and you see that Dak played very well in 2019, he followed it up with a great 5-game stretch in 2020, and then when he gets hurt, the offense falls apart. I think obviously from a cap perspective, whenever you give any player that kind of money, it's usually the quarterback, but whether you have, Zeke is one of the highest paid running backs or any position, you have to cut corners somewhere else. And obviously, since quarterback is the highest average value of the salary, right? You're talking about $40 million, whereas with that $40 million that you gave Dak, you literally could sign, the best running back and the best cornerback, and those two players combined don't even cost $40 million. I think Jalen Ramsey's the highest paid corner at like 16 or 17, and I believe Christian McCaffrey's the highest paid running back at about 16 as well. So both those guys combined don't equal the money you just gave Dak. But again, it really just comes down to when you're going to pay a quarterback specifically that kind of money, you're going to have to cut corners elsewhere. And then you just have to ask yourself, is this guy we're paying the money to, is he good enough to overcome the disadvantages we're going to have at certain positions because of the lack of money we have? And I think if you look at all the top quarterbacks, they actually do overcome the lack of talent on the rest of their roster. Look at guys like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, right? None of those teams have particularly great defenses, but they get it done because their offense is so good. And look at Green Bay. You don't have to put great weapons around Aaron Rodgers. He makes them all better, right? Guys like Patrick Mahomes, when you put great weapons around him, their offense is so explosive that they win so many ball games just because they outscore you. So I think when you look at Dak Prescott, again, I believe he's in the top 10. To me, he would probably be number 7 or 8. I don't think after that top 6 that I mentioned, there's not really a quarterback I don't think I would take ahead of Dak the way he's been playing, and just the way. The only other quarterbacks I maybe consider is a guy like Justin Herbert, but he's just so young. That's why you consider him, because of the age factor. But again, I know a lot of Dallas Cowboys fans, they're still kind of unsure of whether you should give him money or not. I was kind of there too, but again, over this last 2 years, I'm really not there anymore. I think that you had to pay Dak this money. I've been saying it in a couple of my videos. If Dallas is stupid enough to not re-sign him and he hits the free agency market next year, there are so many teams that are instant Super Bowl contenders if they sign Dak. So I'm so glad that that didn't happen. But that's going to be it for today's video. What do you think if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan? Or even if you're not, was the signing good? Do you think it's going to work out long term? Where do you kind of put Dak in your top 10 rankings, or do you even have him in the top 10 and all? Let me know in the comment section below. If you liked the video, definitely make sure to give it a like. It does help the channel out. Also, hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys so much, and I look forward to the next video. He's back, baby. Let's fucking go.